Thank you for joining us today on The Dwelling Show. I'm your host, Ola Dantes, and this week's episode is a special one because this marks the end of season 1 of The Dwelling Show. Yes, can you believe it? Can you believe it? I know I can't for sure. The show was started in July 2017, and a lot has happened since then, both for me and for our multifamily investing business, dwelling.com. So today, as you can guess, there won't be any guest. It's going to be me. Now I've interviewed over 100 guests, right? Many of you still reach out to ask, Ola, how did you get started? Or when did you start? Or, tell me more about your story. So today I'm going to be sharing my story with you guys with the sole purpose, of course, of sharing what I've learned on this journey, and hopefully I can inspire somebody out there. So I like to share my story through different angles, actually. So the very first way is through, one of my favorite quotes, right? Which is stop going with the flow and start paddling towards your goal. This is kind of what I'm calling, the purpose of this episode, which is kind of awokeness, right? So, and then that's the first thing. And the second angle is basically a story of two frogs, right? That's going to be really fascinating. And then lastly, I'm going to be talking about the doing. Basically, the everyday habits that seems insignificant and kind of goes unnoticeable, but actually has a long-term impact on our success, right? One of the main things for me here at the Dwelling Show is obviously I can bring guests to come and tell you, about how to flip a house or how to get your first deal on the contract. But I think fundamentally having that mindset is pretty crucial, right? Without that as a foundation, you could just jump into the game of investing and then meeting, some obstacles which can really lead to you thinking, I don't want to do this, it's so hard, or I'm not cut out for this. But when you really start with a really solid mindset, you're just destined to succeed. So for me, that is kind of my goal, for you, is having that solid mindset, foundation that would actually get you to success. So let's jump right into it. Number one, and I'm obviously going to try to weave in my story as we're going along here. So number one, let's start with that quote that I just mentioned, right? The flow quote. Have you ever heard that saying, just go with the flow? Like, come on, just go with the flow, right? When has that ever worked out, right, the way you wanted to? For me, it's like mostly never, right? Leaving things to chances might be okay. Say you forget your umbrella at home on a rainy day. But with our lives, right, and our journey to financial freedom, those are pretty big items, right? Than, getting wet from a rain if you forgot your umbrella. But not get into your financial number or your goal when you're 65 years old, when you're about to retire. That's pretty serious. So that's kind of the purpose of this very first bit of my story. I also read a statistic that only 1 out of 20 actually become successful, right? And that's 5% of the population. Isn't that shocking? For me, I know that was really shocking when I saw that. And now my bet is that the 95%ers were kind of going with the flow, which is go to school, go to work, get married, get a cute house, some kids, and a dog. You got to have the dog. And then what? We die, not to be morbid. Or maybe, we be a grader at Walmart when we're 66 years old. And that just scares the heck out of me. And full disclosure, I love graders at Walmart. I have no issues with graders at Walmart. It just wasn't, something I was aspiring to be. So going with the flow was just not something I was really comfortable with. And I have to say, majority of people have led this life of undetermined destination due to going with the flow, and they're just fine with it, right? Please understand, I'm not saying it is wrong. Personally, I was just itching for more, to have an impact on the world in my little way, which is why I started this podcast, because I know I cannot carry, everybody on my back, right? I'm a tiny guy, but I can carry everybody along with knowledge, yes? So some are going to get it, and some are just not going to get it, even though you're being carried along with, information and knowledge through podcasts, books, interviews like the ones I've been conducting for the past couple of years. And I never ask why people never get it or people do get it, right? I never sign up for that webinar or that seminar. I just know that it is easy to carry people along than to carry them on your back, right? I kind of feel like that's where that phrase came from, get off my back, right? I think that, so you don't want people to kind of be on, you want to carry them along, right? So you might well say, Ola, well, how do I stop going with the flow? And I'm just going to say, I'm glad you asked, right? For me, I say you stay with the awokeness process. That's like my nice little word right there. You stay with the awokeness process. So what does that mean? A lot of people come to me and say, hey, Ola, I want to start investing. I want to start doing this. I want to start doing that in real estate. And the first thing I say is you have to first challenge your conventional thinking, right? You have beliefs that are lurking around in your mind, right? And you know that there are three parts of the brain, right? You got the conscious, the unconscious, and the subconscious, right? So it's kind of like similar to, after you learn how to tie your laces on your shoe, you never kind of think of it, you just kind of do it, right? So your brain just overtook that task of tying your laces from your conscious side and move it to your subconscious side, right? So there are, some self-limiting beliefs that have taken your mind hostage and not even asking for a ransom that we need to start paying attention to, or, for better lack of words, we need to start paying ransom from, right? So you need to know how to do that. And one way to do that is really just reading new books. Challenge your conventional way of thinking, right? Try to distort the lens in which you've been seeing the world up until now, right? And you might just say, oh, just give me an easy one. An easy one for me is Rich Dad Poor Dad. That is a terrific start, right? I remember reading this book and I was thinking, oh my goodness, this book literally contains what I've been thinking of, but never ever was able to articulate or to even really think of, right? Even though I was thinking about it, but I couldn't think of it, right? It's a very, very weird book. Think and Grow Rich is a classic as well. There are a ton of books, The Richest Man in Babylon. So these are books that you can get that literally, for me, Rich Dad Poor Dad, literally slapped, my subconscious brain into awokeness, right? This really helped me start my journey, right? And I think this foundation is super important because when you get to a point of frustration or inertia where you think that nothing is actually working, you've got a solid foundation from a mindset perspective, and that helps you not to give up like the 95% of people, right? So I think the interesting thing about success is that we are either marching towards our dream or running away from it. There just really isn't a middle ground, right? There's no there isn't a middle ground. There isn't a cul-de-sac. It's either you're basically going towards your dreams or you're going away from your dreams. So kind of to dig in a little bit about, me, my story. About 3 years after we moved to America, my wife and I, with nothing more than a dream, frankly, my wife and I had settled down, we were working, paying the rent, we had this little cute luxury 1-bedroom apartment in suburbia Maryland, living the American dream, right? What could go wrong? Interestingly though, there was this unstoppable feeling inside of me that there has to be more than this, right? And that life shouldn't be this, long, boring, predictable, go to work, come home, eat, sleep, pay the bills, then repeat, right? And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Undoubtedly, many people live this life and love it. Personally, I just didn't find peace in this approach. So shortly thereafter, a friend of mine out of the blue called me. He lives in the UK and he runs a real estate firm, and he called me and said, hey, Ola, I'll be in Dubai for a few days meeting with some investors. I'd like you to join me and help me, with some pain points in my business. Now, I did what every smart man does, right? Obviously, I prayed about it and I asked my wife. Unsurprisingly, my wife said, well, why didn't you guys just maybe FaceTime, maybe Skype, maybe Zoom, or use any video apps in the world, that we now have at our fingertips? And my objection to her was, what if I go on this trip and I learn something new which could help our young family? It was just me and my wife at the time. So with a bit of persuasion, I was on a plane to Dubai. Upon landing, I was expecting the glitz and glamour associated with that part of the world, right? But for most of the 3 days I was there were spent in a pretty typical hotel room, just kind of masterminding and dissecting my friend's business. Like, so during that process, I learned a ton, right? And really helped my friend repurpose and reorganize his business. And as a result, on my way back home to America, I started to think, hey, maybe I could do this in the US, right? It's a much larger real estate market. So shortly thereafter, when I got back home, my wife and I, we talked, and we bought our very first property, right? This was a duplex in a Class A area in Baltimore, Maryland. We had to ditch our fancy luxury apartment in suburbia Maryland, where we always had parking. We didn't have to take out the trash. We didn't have to worry about property tax. But nonetheless, we started getting monthly rent payments, right? Which were kind of new for us and heavily subsidized our paychecks, right? So we got to keep most of our paychecks. So it was just a typical night. My wife and I were at home doing what lovers do, cooking. And then we had an epiphany, right? I said, baby, my account has been growing, right? And just been growing. Literally, this money comes in and actually sits there. It doesn't kind of run away in rent or whatever. So, and she said she was really, like, yeah, me too. So we thought, wait, if we could do more of this and get our time back somehow, or do whatever we want to do, right? As we appreciate the ephemeral nature of our time here on earth. Like, if we could do more of this, get our time back, go and do the things that matter to us, which is, helping, kids in the Philippines where my wife is from, or Nigeria where I'm from, or even here in the United States, that would be awesome. So after this realization, we founded dwelling.com, which is Dwelling Show is an extension of that brand. And we've been doing pretty well, considering we've only been in the country for just about five or so years. And recently, I'm just so excited to announce we just closed on a 160 unit building. It was a 11.5 million apartment deal in Houston, Texas. And things have just been kind of chugging along a little bit. Nothing really grandiose, just kind of day in, day out, just kind of crunching and being a tortoise, right? Just kind of slowly but surely, and then with Dwelling kind of growing now, as they say, the rest is history being made. So the reason I go through this story kind of anecdotally is because some people get opportunities but miss the mark, as the opportunities do not come, in an expected package, with a ribbon, right? That's why I went through that whole story. When my friend called me, the easy thing to say would have been, sorry, no, I can't, I'm busy with work, or of course, I wouldn't be here having this conversation with you guys and trying to inspire others to, follow this journey to financial freedom. So remember, there is a method to the madness, even with success. So don't leapfrog the process. Do not leapfrog the process. So leapfrog, right? Good segue to the frog story. So number 2, tales of two frogs, right? Full disclaimer, by the way, if you ever Google this story or this tale, I think it's from Russia, you will find 2 versions, right? There's like a kiddie version and there's like a standard version. So I'm going to go with the standard version. So there were these 2 frogs essentially playing in the pond. Usually one of the frogs, let's just say they're sisters. Usually one sister is a little bit more impulsive, jumps in the water, swims all day, ups from one side of the pool to the other, feeds very frantically, very, very, very impulsive in nature. Yet the other one is kind of like, I'm just going to take life easy. I'm just going to be where I am. But anyway, the very impulsive frog just told the sister, like, hey, why don't we get on land one day, right? Why are we always just in the pond? Let's go on land. Let's see what's going on out there. So there was a barn in a farm just right next to the pond. And they went into the barn and they saw a pail of cream, basically. And they saw this liquid in a bucket. And so they obviously jumped in. They were in euphoria of like, oh, this tastes really amazing. So they gobbled as much cream as they could. They kept on eating and then realized, well, I think we're pretty much done here. Let's get going. Let's get back to the pond. Of course, unbeknownst to them, they're in a bucket, so they can't get out, right? right? So you've got these two frogs, belly full. They're about to sleep. They're tired, but they need to get back to the pond, right? So obviously one frog is like, well, we just have to figure it out. We just need to keep paddling and paddling and paddling. As you'd guess, this is the impulsive frog, the one that keeps, trying everything, right? And the other is like, well, I mean, I think this is it. I think we're gonna die, like I don't think we're gonna get out of this bucket today. We're just gonna die. So I'm just done. I don't want to give it a shot. I'm gonna see you in the afterlife, right? So unfortunately for that frog, drowned and died in a pail full of cream. Of course, the other frog just kept paddling and paddling and paddling for a very long time. So this can be synonymous to the little things that we do every day that it almost feels like it's unnoticeable by anybody, or even you yourself, noticing it. So I'm just kind of trying to connect the story to ourselves. But let's get back to the story real quickly. So the frog kept going and going and going. And after a very long time, maybe let's say 2 to 3 hours, the frog really started to realize that, hey, I think this cream is turning into something solid, right? But obviously, as we all know, cream turns to butter, right? After you whisk it a little bit. So from the little paddling, even though the frog's legs were getting tired, I'm sure the muscle were aching, but the frog just kept on paddling and going, and then the cream turned into butter, and the frog was able to get out of the pail, get out of the barn, and back into the pond. Of course, the sister did not follow.
Oh.
But the good news is, in the kiddie version, the second frog did not actually die because she was saved by her sister's persistency. And just, our sister had a positive outlook about life. So I think the moral of this story is just really, when you're looking at life, is having that perspective that you have to stay persistent and you have to have a positive outlook on life and really on the future, right? I think I read somewhere that if you basically sit and you put your head down for a minute and you think, and then you do that for 5 minutes, and then you raise your head up, like looking into the ceiling, and you do that for 5 minutes, you tend to think positively when your head is raised up than when it's raised down. You can try that. So whenever you're having a positive outlook, right, and you're being persistent, the results will come. You might feel tired sometimes, like the frog, right, getting tired from all that paddling, but eventually those little things that you do will basically compound over time, and you start to see predictable results, frankly, right? So I think the moral of this story is our brain is constantly eavesdropping on everything we say. So I think the intentional thing is to just, say positive words. So that way the brain is capturing positive words, because don't forget, the brain is already capturing some kind of words and storing it into our unconscious and subconscious part of our brain. So I think that's very important to note. And personally, for me, this has really helped me. Many people say, "Why did you keep smiling?" I was like, "Well, if you just basically smile, your emotions actually change just from smiling, right?" So I think these are really, really almost insignificant attributes that really does help propel one into success, frankly. So the last and not the least is the doing. Right. So you can understand persistency and having a positive outlook. You can understand, the fact that you need to stop going with the flow. So the doing, which is the third part of the story, is actually start paddling towards your goal. This is the paddling part. You've basically been on this journey and you're like, oh my God, if I don't paddle, this boat is literally going to, a waterfall, right? Niagara Falls, right? This is not good. I need to start paddling towards my goals. Whatever the goal looks like, obviously it's different for everyone, but in order to paddle, in order to start with the doing, right? I think there are a few prerequisites, right? And if you may permit me to give you the secret to success that I have learned thus far in my life, it's frankly just two things, right? It's self-confidence and discipline. Self-confidence and discipline. First and foremost, you have to have the self-confidence to believe in yourself, to be comfortable with who you are, and then just having the discipline to follow through on your everyday, every week, every month, and every year actions that can get you to that point, right? And there are different ways we can do that. So my goal with this podcast isn't just to provide you with just technical content, but I want to make sure that your mindset is top notch to take you on to the financial freedom that would be able to help you course correct on your way so that you can not only get to the destination, but more importantly, relish the journey by having a balanced life, right? And for me, a balanced life involves a good health, great relationship, an intentional financial plan, spirituality, personal development, and frankly, just having a positive impact on the world or on your world, wherever you find yourself in. So these two things, self-confidence and discipline, will bleed, onto everything else we do, right? For an instance, if you stay disciplined with a particular aspect of your life, say going for a mile walk every day, this simple act of discipline will be a consistent habit over the long haul, right? And that eventually leads to a reduction in, say, your weight or maybe your cholesterol numbers. So now on the first day of the brisk walk, you aren't really seeing any results or noticing any changes. If anything, if you walk too fast or even run, you might feel some pain, right? But in a year, when you go for your annual and your doctor says to you, oh wow, your cholesterol numbers have gone down dramatically, what are you doing differently, right? So success is never a big dramatic outplay of an event, but it's really the little seemingly inconsequential things that we do every day, every week, every month, and every year that shows itself as a manifestation of those little tasks, frankly. So to conclude, we talked about three things. There was three angles we went through, which was number one was my quote of stop going with the flow, which is basically the awokeness, challenging your conventional thinking and start paddling towards your goals, which is the doing, the end. And then we talked about the story of the two frogs, about persistency and having a positive outlook. And like I said, the end, which is the actually doing, which is that everyday habits, right? That may seem insignificant, but actually goes a long way. Really helps us get to success quickly. So what I would like for you to do is, if you've got anything from this episode, I need a huge favor from you. No, actually 2 favors, right? I know I'm pushing my luck here, but hey, you gotta try, hey? So first, if you feel like you picked up anything from this conversation, from this podcast, send this particular podcast to someone that you care about, right? This episode, if you're listening on YouTube, send this video to a friend by email, WhatsApp, text, put on social media, whatever. And then please subscribe to the Dwelling Show. Like I said in the beginning, this is 2 years going. The podcast is growing, slowly but surely as well. So please subscribe and review the podcast. This is going to be in the show notes. I just want to say good luck to you guys. Keep listening week in, week out, and then we're going to keep building this community and encouraging one another. Thank you so much. One of my friends in the real estate investing space, Rod Cliff, is hosting another one of his live events, but this time is hosting it in Baltimore, Maryland, my home city, September 27th to the 29th. I will be there. It's all about multifamily investing. If you've never ever been to any of Rod's events, you have to be at this one. Not only because I'm going to be there in person, but also you get to meet a ton of other people. You get to network. You get to learn about multifamily investing as well. And I have a discount code for you guys. If you guys want to guess what that is, it's Dwellin. So just enter Dwellin at checkout, DWELLYNN, and you would get $100 off your ticket. So make sure you go to Rod's Bootcamp. This will all be in the show notes for you. So that's RODSBOOT camp.com. Enter Dwelling at checkout to get $100 off. I cannot wait to see you guys there. Thank you so much.